Hello and welcome to the video. My name is Wade Daniel Smith. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the Torah, which, Westerners know as the law of Moses and Christians know as the law of Moses, versus Pauline doctrine, which, both even Jesus himself, his words refute Pauline doctrine. But, because Jesus said that you could not be saved by calling him Lord, Lord, that you had to do the good works of the Father. And Jesus said the law, not even one jot or tittle of it, was ever going to pass away. But Paul claimed that you could be saved just by calling Jesus Lord, and Paul claimed that the law of God was somehow done away with, which Jesus himself said, not only did not say that, but said the exact opposite of it. But at any rate, in the Torah, further proof that the law itself says that it's never going to pass away. In the Torah, when Moses is giving the law, he tells them in Deuteronomy 28 to obey and keep the law all of their lives from youth to until death, and only then are they blessed. But then he tells them to keep the law for all generations. All of your generations. For all of time is what that means. So the Pauline doctrine that the death and supposed resurrection of Jesus somehow did away with the law of God, the law of Moses, much less the law of God, is not in the law of Moses. And even Jesus said so. That the law of Moses tells you to keep the law of Moses for all generations. So where did Paul get that nonsense? I couldn't possibly claim to know because I wasn't there. But all of his epistles claim that claim. And Protestant preachers think that Paul is somehow more inspired than Jesus himself. If you thought Jesus was God, why don't you read Jesus' words about that topic? Because he three times actually, said the exact opposite of Paul's doctrine. At least three times that are recorded in the original Gospels. So either Paul never read any of the Gospels, or he just made up his own religion for some reason. Either way, he made up his own religion. Because some people who do obey God, nevertheless, they still try to claim that every single word in the Bible is inspired and infallible, even when it's pretty clear that James wrote his epistle to rebuke the other apostles for believing Paul. It's literally what James' epistle is about. And they won't admit that either. Because at one point, like I said in the other video, even Paul had to admit that they must not be right. Because in Galatians 5, he nevertheless, after he said all that nonsense, he then listed 20 some odd mortal sins, and then it finally admitted that if you committed any of them, you couldn't go to heaven anyway, no matter what you claim to believe about Jesus. He said so, finally, which totally undermined everything else that he wrote anyway, even in the same letter. So, where did you get the nonsense from? The Torah tells you to keep the Torah your entire life for all of your generations, especially the 10 Commandments, but even all of the so-called minor commandments. For some reason, Paul started teaching that the law itself was a curse and that Christ had somehow redeemed you from the curse of the law. That makes no sense. The only reason you would be cursed under the law is if you were a perpetual willful sinner. If you were actually obeying God to begin with, you would be blessed under the law. It tells you that in Deuteronomy 28. And Samuel said, obedience is greater than sacrifice, and to acknowledge God is greater than all whole burnt offerings. So he didn't tell you to look for some coming redeemer to die on a cross. He told you to obey God to begin with, and then is literally what that means. All right. That's the end of the video, I guess, because I totally debunked Pauline doctrine, and I totally debunked the so-called righteousness and salvation and justification by faith doctrine that every major Protestant preacher, especially Jimmy Swaggart's camp, and especially anything that my parents ever taught in or any church I've ever been in, for that matter, all claim that you can be righteous by faith, which had absolutely nothing to do with anything taught by any true teacher in the Torah and prophets whatsoever. But I don't even know where it originally came from, other than Paul. But evidently he had to justify somehow the fact that he was a multiple murderer, and that's probably why he started teaching that. Because if he looked at the law said that if you, and even his own claim in Galatians also said that he deserved to be put to death, which in fact he was eventually put to death for murder. So the only reason he would be teaching that is to falsely justify his own crimes, to be honest with you. But anyway, that's the end of the video.